Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning came out in 2006, and this is a prequel to Platinum Dune's 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, when the 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, it was a huge hit. So Platinum Dunes, they wanted to do a sequel, but the thing is, fans, they really liked R. Lee Ermey's character from the first remake, so instead of doing a sequel to the remake, they decided to do a prequel because they wanted to do a movie that really focused on R. Lee Ermey's character. The problem was, though, R. Lee Ermey's character died at the end of the first movie, so he obviously couldn't come back in a sequel, so instead of doing a sequel, they did a prequel. Now, the guy who directed this movie before this directed the movie Darkness Falls, and after this he would go on to direct movies like Battle Los Angeles and Wrath of the Titans, and he also directed the most recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Now, the guy's name is Jonathan. I am probably going to butcher his last name, but it's Liebesman. I know I'm butchering his last name. The screenplay for this movie was written by Shannon Turner, who before this wrote the remake of The Longest Yard and would go on to co-write X-Men First Class. Now, the original story for this movie was written by Shannon Turner and David Schow. Now, David Schow also wrote Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and he also co-wrote the screenplay for The Crow. So, the plot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, is it's set in the year 1969, and essentially it's about how the Hewitt family became the way they were in the first remake. So, in the beginning of the movie, you realize that this town that they live in is very economically depressed. Like, places all over the town are going out of business, particularly this slaughterhouse that the character of Thomas Hewitt works at. Now, in this continuity, Thomas Hewitt is Leatherface's real name, and essentially this movie is also about how Hewitt became Leatherface. Basically, after he gets fired from his job, he kills his boss, who is an asshole, and then the sheriff goes to R. Lee Ermey's character and tells him that Thomas is out killing people, so they go to stop him, and then R. Lee Ermey's character shoots the sheriff and takes his uniform and essentially assumes the role of sheriff. So in this you also find out how R. Lee Ermey's character became the sheriff in the first movie. So in this movie you also see the Hewitt family first start to eat people. This is where they first become cannibals. So the movie also follows this group of young adults, particularly these two brothers. One of them has already served in Vietnam. This movie takes place in the 1960s, which of course is when the Vietnam War was going on, and one of them has already served a tour in Vietnam, but now he's going back to serve another tour, and he has his younger brother with him who has just been drafted, and his younger brother, as it turns out, doesn't actually want to go, and they're with their girlfriends driving to California where the two brothers are going to enlist, and it turns out that the one younger brother and his girlfriend are actually planning on going to Mexico, and he's basically planning on dodging the draft. But, long story short, while they're driving through Texas, they run into this motorcycle gang, and one of the members of this motorcycle gang goes after them and causes them to get into a car accident, and what happens is then R. Lee Ermey's character shows up as the quote-unquote sheriff, and then he kills the biker, and essentially he takes these young adults hostage, and that's the basic plotline of Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Now, I liked Platinum Dune's first remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I didn't think it was a great movie, but I liked it for the most part. I thought it was alright. I had a few problems with it, but overall, I could recommend the first remake. I personally don't really give a shit about this movie. I mean, all the stuff with the Hewitt family in this is actually really interesting, seeing how the Hewitt family became as crazy as they were in the first remake. I thought that was interesting, but I honestly wanted to see more of that, and I really didn't give a shit about the lead characters in the movie. Not the villains, but I didn't give a shit about the protagonist of the movie, these young adults that the family is torturing. I really didn't care about any of them. I mean, and also, I mentioned in my review on the first remake, I didn't really care for the characters in that, but at least in that, the characters didn't overly annoy me. For some reason, these characters in this movie really kind of pissed me off, and I don't know what it was about them, but I don't know, I just really didn't give a shit about these characters, at least the protagonist of the movie. I actually, though, really did like all the stuff with the Hewitt family, but not for nothing, though, that's not really a good thing when you care more about the antagonist than you do the protagonist. And it's not like the protagonists in this movie were meant to be unlikable, because if you listen to the audio commentary on this DVD, it's clear that the filmmakers really wanted you to care about these characters. And I'm just speaking for myself. You might watch the movie and actually really like these characters. I just personally didn't really care for these characters. Also, this movie has some stuff in it that really is kind of pointless. Like, in the first movie, there was this character who was a member of the Hewitt family who was in a wheelchair because he had no legs. In this one, you find out how he lost his legs, and it's like, did we really need to know that? And also, in this, you see Leatherface first get his chainsaw, but the way he gets it is kinda dumb. Basically, in the beginning of the movie, when he kills his boss at the slaughterhouse, he kills his boss in his boss's office, and then Leatherface sees a chainsaw sitting on his boss's desk, and he takes it. And when I was watching this, I was like, why the fuck is there a chainsaw in this guy's office? I mean, I know it's a slaughterhouse, and maybe somebody who knows more about this could correct me on this, but did they use chainsaws in slaughterhouses back then? I mean, if they did, then I guess I'm stupid, but it just seems, to me, it just seemed really stupid that there was a freaking chainsaw sitting on this guy's desk in his office, and then Leatherface took that. But then again, maybe I'm the one who's stupid, because I don't really know much about slaughterhouses, or how slaughterhouses were run back in the 1960s. One thing I thought was funny in this movie, though, is the guy who plays the sheriff, not R. Lee Ermey's character, but the person who was the real sheriff before R. Lee Ermey killed him, is the same guy who played Axel in The Walking Dead. And he's been in other stuff, too, like he was in The Devil's Rejects, but when I was rewatching this movie for this review, I just saw him, and I was like, hey, that's Axel from The Walking Dead. But yeah, I personally didn't care for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. But I'm not saying don't check it out, because you might like the movie. I just personally didn't like it, and if you have seen this movie and if you liked it, that's fine. That's your opinion, to each his own, but I personally didn't care for the film. But that's not to say the movie is completely terrible, though. Once again, I think all the stuff with the Hewitt family is great. I just wanted to see more of it, and all the scenes with R. Lee Ermey in it are fucking amazing. But yeah, that's my review on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, and bye.